Got to say, it is so nice to see so many women in the audience today. Those of you that are usually here, it's not always like that, is it? Well, thank you everyone for coming. Those of you that have been here for a long time know that this is my first time interviewing. So I'm just so glad that Dee is here with us. It is Empowering Women Month as well. Another reason why I hijacked Dee at an event and said, please talk. We're not expecting any fire alarms today, so if it does go up, then you guys know to walk out the doors. Bathrooms are just at the back there. So be active, and then of course write up all of our sponsors as well when you're doing that to get lots of traction on your tweets as well. So thank you everyone for coming. Hello. Hello. So Dee, you are VP of Scottish Rugby.
I am.
And it's a volunteer position.
Volunteer position, and once I assumed the presidency, which was on the 4th of August this year, there's a modest non-executive director fee.
Excellent. And you will be most likely the first female president in a Tier 1 nation. Is that right?
And the first ever for Scotland as well.
First ever for Scotland, that's pretty cool. So tell us a bit about your history, because we know you were in the police, but what did you do before that journey started? Were you always into rugby?
No, I only started playing rugby at the age of 38. I had a background in performance sport. I represented Scotland and Great Britain in athletics, latterly as a masters athlete over the age of 40, and played high level of netball as well. And then one day I was at Mull Sevens, and I saw women playing rugby, and I thought, oh, I need that in my life. And it's been the most empowering, fantastic journey. And I can't describe to those of you that don't play rugby what a level of satisfaction there is when you hit somebody legally in a Friday night. You know, if they've gone down properly, you've done it well. It's a great stress buster. All the experiences and friendships and laughs I've had have been attached to that particular sport. Netball I find very, very bitchy, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Athletics is a very single sport, so you're just competing for yourself. But as far as team sports are concerned, the laughs we've had have just been fantastic.
That's quite an interesting question. Who in the audience has played rugby before? So we do have quite a few. And who else is just interested in rugby and likes watching the rugby players? Male or female? Fantastic. What I forgot to say, if you guys have questions, just chuck your hand up there. It's an open forum for everyone to ask whatever it is that they want to ask. Okay, excellent. Cool. So you started, what got you into sports in the first place?
I think ever since I was young, I've always been taller and bigger than most people. I come from a family of giants. And I just kind of happened into it in primary school with netball, and then progressed through the levels. Athletics, I was headhunted for a club, did junior schools international for Scotland, just continued, but then when I left school, basically what happened was I went from a co-ed school to a boys independent school, where I was one of 2 girls in lower 6th, and they couldn't have any facility for girls playing sports, so it all kind of died, other than the club's sports that I did, and then came through here to study, played a lot of volleyball here. And then, what happened after that? Yeah, as part of my course here, they sent us to university in France, and I crashed a motorbike and had to come home. So my parents said, we could pay off your huge student debt for you, but we won't, so get a job. So I thought, what will I do? I thought I'd join the police. So in those days, Hong Kong police would take you in straight away as an inspector. So I applied for Hong Kong police and was getting through the process pretty well. But my real name is Donalda, it's not Dee. And my dad's Donald, West Highland tradition.
I like that tradition.
Hence the shortening of the name. But I was getting through this really well, this application process, until I noticed my dad kept opening my mail. And of course, they obviously thought I was Donald and not Donalda. So they wouldn't admit females straight in as inspectors.
Oh, really?
So applied for the Met, and my mum said, no, you can't go to the Met. That was just when Yvonne Fletcher had been murdered. Applied for Strathclyde and got into Strathclyde. and was posted to Oban. And I can remember vividly crying down the phone to my parents, saying, "There's an enemy to Oban, there's nothing happening up there." And my mum she said, it's fine, it'll be busy. In the first week we had car chases, stabbings, housebreakers. And you don't expect that in a sleepy fishing village like that. But I thought, I'm quite hooked on this. So decided very early on I didn't want promotion, and ended up for the latter 25 years as a detective investigating serious sexual crimes and monitoring of sex offenders and child protection.
Wow. So you've had quite a journey already, especially against male-female stereotypes and breaking down those doors and saying, I'm here to stay.
When I joined the police, I don't know if you've ever seen the TV series Life on Mars. That's what it was like. You in the skirt, get the kettle on. But I'm very happy to say that as times moved on, attitudes changed, more women were promoted into positions of responsibility. And I think latterly, there's far better representation and less. There was a degree of sexism, but I'm very much of the opinion, and please don't get this wrong, is that sometimes we women don't do ourselves a lot of favours. And that you just have to rise above a lot of the, not even the sexism, some of the attitudes. We can't challenge everybody's attitudes, and quite frankly, that's their loss.
Yeah. That's quite good learning for today, absolutely. So what I've found out is you won the landslide, you won by landslide.
Yep.
To come in with SRU.
Yep.
That must have been quite overwhelming.
I think I'm still in a state of shock over it, if I'm honest. The two other candidates were long respected men involved in rugby, club men, and very, very interesting, capable candidates. And the way the process happens is you're given your voting papers, and you vote once, and then if there's not a clear majority, then you vote twice. And I'd already marked my second card, thinking, no, there's no way I'm going to get this first time round. And I did. I have to say, it was quite a startling experience. So straight afterwards, they wanted to do media interviews, and I thought, no, I need to go phone my dad. So he's 87, and I said, Dad, you're speaking to the new Vice President of Scottish Rugby. Who? That's your daughter. I've just been elected. What for? He said, I thought that was tonight. I said, no, it's just happened, Dad. All right, well done. But he was the first person I had to tell.
That is fantastic. And since then, do you feel like attitudes within SRU have changed quite a lot? Because they're very proud of their gender equality, aren't they?
I think within the Scottish Rugby itself, there hasn't been very many attitudes to alter. Perhaps maybe a bit out in clubland, and we have to accept that people have been involved in the game a lot longer than I have been involved in their clubs a lot longer than I have, and maybe aren't quite used to seeing women in that particular arena. But rather than going at it and challenging it head on, I've tried to come round with a degree of subterfuge and common sense.
Yeah.
We have Leslie Thompson on the board. We also have Rosie Hume, who's a Scottish Rugby Council member as well. So as far as representation is concerned, we're far better than any other union.
Yeah. I
remember being at Twickenham, and this chap came up to me, and he was about up to my waist, and he said, we've been told by Sport England that we've got to include far more women in our governance, otherwise they'll take away our money. What do you think about that? I said, yeah, that's a good idea. And he said, so will you be doing that in Scotland? And I said, no. He said, why not? I said, A, because we've already done it, and B, we're not in England, so we're not losing any money from Scotland. Touché.
That works out quite well. So going back to your police days, were you always interested in crime? What was that decision to say, right, I want to work in the police?
I needed to pay off my overdraft.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it.
It's absolutely simple. My dad was in the police for 34 years, and my mum was in the police as well. But in those days you had to give up when you got married. You just had to resign. There was absolutely no maternity leave or anything like that. And quite frankly, it was the last thing I wanted to do. But I thought I stood a good chance of being admitted, and my plan was to do it for a year and then continue my travels.
Yeah. And was it during this time that you started the Oban Ladies Rugby as well?
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
I decided one of the girls I played netball was a girl called Rochelle McDougall, who's a Kiwi girl. Turns out she's Jonah Lumu's second cousin.
Nice.
So I spoke to her. She's an excellent netball player. I said, do you fancy playing rugby, Rochelle? Nah. I said, oh, come on. All right, sweet. That may have been an Australian accent, by the way. So
Pretty
she
buzz.
spoke to her husband, who's this big hunk of a man, and he'd agreed to coach us. So the first night we fetched up in the dark on a Friday night. It was absolutely hammering it down, and there was about 6 or 7 of us jumping over the puddles, and Andy, the coach, he said, "No, girls, you're going to have to learn." So by the end of the night, we were body surfing through these puddles. And as it grew, it just got better and better. More people came on board. The first year, we really just played sevens because it wasn't enough of us. Then we entered the league. We had our first foreign tour, which was Amsterdam Sevens. So we were all warming up, having a cigarette and a beer on the grass. And we could hear this, "Ooh, oh, ooh, oh." What's going on? I said, "Right, girls, we'll just find out who we're playing first." Canada. Canada national team, they'd use that as part of their selection process. So we got onto the pitch and I did the toss with the Canada captain, and she went, "Are you the Scottish national team?" Just give us 2 minutes. 63-0. But I think we won the beer drinking contest, I think.
Yeah.
So since then, we've been to Mallorca Beach Rugby most years, which is a great event. Where else have we been? Bibione Beach Rugby, Ameland Beach Rugby, just as an end of tour sort of gelling.
Yeah.
And the experiences are fantastic, most of which I can't tell you about, but certainly very, very good times.
Excellent. If any of you haven't started following the Open rugby team on Twitter, you should. They've got this amazing picture that they had out where they've written on their arms everything that rugby means to them. And there was hope, and there were so many empowering words there that everyone could learn from. And that's what rugby encompasses, isn't it? It really brings out.
When we first introduced the women's section, there was a lot of resistance to it, and they wouldn't let us use the first team pitches. They were really quite strict with what we could and couldn't do. But latterly, the women's team have been so successful. They won the National Bowl final a couple of weeks ago, and they're up for an award tomorrow night for Team of the Year against Hillhead Jordan Hill.
Excellent.
So that, personally, that would be the pinnacle of my rugby career, for them to have achieved everything, from when we first started. So please follow them. They would love that. They're a good bunch of girls.
Is there any way that we can help vote on that tomorrow night?
It's already been decided.
Yeah.
The panel has sat. I was meant to be part of the panel, but I didn't feel that was quite the right thing to do, considering my own team were there. But no, I wish them all the best. And it's a great event. All the club people come from all over Scotland, and it's at Murrayfield in the President's Suite. Good pizzazz.
So you come on as president in August.
Yep.
What are you hoping to achieve through your presidency? Do you have goals?
No specific goals, if I'm honest, because I had a chat with the chairman about this, and I think that if you're too specific with what you want as your outcomes, if you fail to achieve them, then you haven't succeeded. So my vision going forward is to continue the astonishing progress that Scottish rugby has made. We're sitting 5th in the world. We've had great Six Nations achievements, both men and women. So I would like to continue with that progress, to implement the changes that we want to implement for the greater good of Scottish rugby, and hopefully get through the 2 years and can sit back and say, well, we actually did pretty well.
Yeah. I think we're all looking forward to some Scottish wins, aren't we? Did any of you guys watch the last games that came out, yeah? Any tears of joy?
Well, I am Australian. So
Oh, shame.
What a shame.
So I went to the Australian-Scotland game, and it was just amazing how patriotic all of the Murrayfield was. It was just insane. It was even emotional. I mean, my dad is Scottish, and I was getting, I don't know the Scottish national anthem, but it was so emotional watching it and then hearing everyone sing, and it was amazing.
It's a great experience, isn't it? Yeah. We were at the old firm match, the Calcutta Cup match, and apparently what they had to do, they had to alter the level of the PA system because they expected the crowd to be very loud. You could hear them, you could feel them in your chest. It was amazing. And then to have that win was just spectacular.
It was. I was crying. So what made you take the decision to actually go for this position?
When I became involved in women's rugby, I was asked to join the Women's Rugby Forum, which was based centrally at Murrayfield, as the youth representative. Moved on, and then the woman who was the Scottish Rugby Council member, her tenure was going to be up, so she persuaded me to take over from her. Got voted in for that, and then after about 3 or 4 years at that, I was approached by a couple of influential members who suggested that I go for vice president. And initially I thought, no, that's just silly, because I didn't want to fail. I just didn't want to be made a fool of, and I thought that's what would happen. But part of the process is you go around all these different clubs and do hustings, where you state what your manifesto is going to be, what your visions are for the future. And my sort of mantra for that was just be yourself, just be honest, because if you lie and make false promises and don't fulfil them, then you're just going to be caught out. And I don't want to appear conceited, but I think that's what sold it to people, was the fact that what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
You know, there's no superficial aspect to it, and yeah, it's been an absolute privilege so far, absolutely, and going forward it's going to be an enormous privilege. But my husband still, we sit at these post-match dinners round the table and people still ask him what he does at Scottish Rugby. They just assume.
Really?
Yeah. He says, well, nothing, it's the wife.
Does he get quite a kick out of being able to do that?
He does. Well, the novelty will wear off, I'm sure.
So what do you see happening after your presidency is ended then?
You can still be invited back to various events as a past president, but I spoke to Alan Lawson about this some time ago, who's a past president, and he said, when you go to these events, the further you get towards the door, you realise then maybe you've been here too long, because they just try and phase you out. So I don't know. In 2 years' time, hopefully my husband will have retired, so we'll probably just travel. I think there comes a natural end to what you do.
Yeah.
And I can look back with great passion and enjoyment. So far, it's just been fantastic.
And you'll stick with the Open Ladies, of course.
Oh, that's my baby.
Definitely.
That's my baby.
Are we allowed to ask if you have a favourite rugby player?
Ooh. In Scotland?
Any. Let's not narrow it down to Scotland just in case.
Yeah, I think I'll come back to you on that one. I think Hamish Watson.
Yeah.
Hamish Watson. He was an absolute workhorse. Just he's everywhere on the pitch. He's industrious, good for Edinburgh, good for Scotland. But then the other one will be my son. So.
Yeah, of course. That was my next question. Have you noticed, because anyone that's followed rugby for a long time or knows the history knows that rugby has changed quite a lot just in the last 30, 40 years. Like lifting up in the lineups wasn't allowed, now it is. Do you see rugby changing a lot, or do you think we're starting to stabilise the game a bit more?
I'm no scientist, but I think the physics of rugby are huge now, because all of these guys are far bigger units. And sometimes I laugh when you go onto YouTube and you look back at rugby in the 70s and 80s when they've got the big long sleeve cotton shirts on and they're just faffing about the pitch. But now you see the contact that comes in, and you're talking about two guys that are maybe 19, 20 stone hitting each other really, really hard. There's obviously a big push within Scottish rugby at the moment, and has been for some time, on concussion. And it was quite a revelation for me to be at some of these meetings with Dr. Willie Stewart. And it's not, you always think concussion is just a kind of temporary thing, but it's actually quite a severe brain injury. And it's not just your brain hitting off your inside of your head like that, it's a twist injury as well.
Yeah.
And obviously there was the young boy that died in Northern Ireland, Ben Robinson. And they commemorate it every year and do a lot of good work into concussion. So Scottish rugby are really at the forefront of trying to identify, and if in doubt, sit them out. And if you're rugby followers, you'll see various matches recently on the continent where there's been a bit of controversy about why players have not been sent off for an HIA. So I think that's an important thing to me as well, and it's about the safety. And each of these players, their lifespan's not that long.
No.
I don't mean their physical lifespan, but their career span. So you want to protect your players as much as possible. Sorry.
So yeah, actually to follow up on that, do you think that youth rugby is in a bit of a danger because that revelation of brain injury is coming in, and parents are like, nah, you're not doing that sport, you're going into football, or something like that? Do you think that's a thing that's going to happen? Because it is a thing in American football in the States, right?
I think American football is slightly different in that there's maybe a false expectation that a helmet's going to prevent you from a concussion, which is simply not the case. And you see all these kids in scrum caps, that won't protect them from concussion, it'll protect them from a cut. Parents will be different. Some parents will say, you get on that pitch and just play. Some will decide not to let their children play. And the most dangerous period for any sort of brain injury is a secondary head injury from an initial concussion. And teenage boys are apparently far more prone to that than any other age group. But I suppose it's like any sport, you have to evaluate what's going to be best for the physical well-being of your child, being active, being part of a team, and also understanding the risks. But I think the main thing we have to do is to completely continue to educate coaches and teachers to recognise the symptoms and make sure they don't continue with the sport until they're all better. Does that answer your question?
Do you think we should be introducing more rugby into schools?
Absolutely.
That was a bit of a trick question, wasn't it?
Sorry.
Sorry. Do you feel like technology will be more integrated into rugby? Because there's so many, I mean, football now, there's such an emphasis on watching screenbacks and everything. And the past rugby games, there's been more emphasis on the referees not finalising a call or anything because they've been waiting from the other refs or the other
TMOs.
Do you feel like it's going to be more prevalent now that technology is going to be a bigger thing, or do you think rugby is going to be slower than the other sports in that sense?
Rugby's actually very much at the forefront when it comes to analysis, and I can guarantee you after each competitive match, Six Nations for example, the analysts will have done all their coding by probably 4 in the morning. So they'll sit straight after the match and do all the coding about how many metres somebody's run, how many contact areas they've been involved in. Each of the players will wear their black box. We've just invested in a brand new system which will revolutionise the way we record data and analyse it. What was the other part of your question I was going to answer there? It's gone.
I can't even remember now.
But
so rugby is at the forefront of technology within sports.
All sports are going to have to become more technical because each of these sports nowadays has a lot of finance attached to it. So you want to make sure that all the right decisions are being made and the right outcomes are being achieved.
Do you think that sometimes that it could almost damage the game in the sense? Because there has been some debate in that sense where technology is being too integrated and it's being like, well, you're ruining the game because it's meant to be this natural sport where everyone...
I'm not sure because you'll always get the people in the seats who think they're fantastic referees themselves. And the referee will award a try and they'll say, it's knocked on. It's definitely knocked on. The TMO to a certain extent can be a fail-safe to that, but only if the referee decides to go upstairs, which isn't always the case and not for all aspects of play. So again, there's more and more finance attached to it, so you want to make sure the correct result has been recorded fairly and equitably. So I don't know, we'll see, but some match officials aren't as good as maybe having it replayed on the TMO screen. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I wouldn't like to be a TMO.
What do you guys think of it? Does the audience have any ideas or hints or tips?
I think it's probably got to be a sort of transition we see in every industry where you see technology coming in. We'd like to continue to work the way we did, but actually we sort of see that it makes sense to start using technology and actually start trust technology, but we still don't want to change the way we work because we just don't like change.
Yeah.
But then over time we'll see that actually, allowing it into the way we work and our process for decision making and so on just makes sense. Because so I think we're sort of still in that transition where you allow certain referees not to look at it and others do because they're comfortable enough to allow technology to maybe tell them they were wrong.
Yeah.
So I think it's just in the future you probably wouldn't allow an individual to make that choice. You just expect them to double check their decision. It's just
part of life now.
People change, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Just give it a few years. You can't force it upon them really. So.
Excellent.
Just going back to your point there as well, I don't know if you're aware that it's the Under-20s World Championship just now in France. So Scotland played last night and lost by 1 point to Italy, which was a killer.
Ouch.
But they've introduced new trial laws and they're not allowed to tackle above the nipple area.
Wow.
Might be a problem for some women.
Just maybe.
Sorry?
I saw the last 20 minutes. Did anyone get done for it?
I didn't see it at all. It was just my son told me the score last night.
I presume they are forcing it, but I wasn't sure. Yeah, well, it wasn't good either at the end of that.
I think, did it go to a penalty and then Italy drove it over the line in Italy in injury time? Yeah.
They lost their head up. They lost their head there.
Bummer.
So your son plays, you've got 2 sons.
2 boys,
Do
yep.
they both play rugby?
Yeah, Magnus, he plays professionally for Edinburgh.
Yep.
And he's away with the Scotland squad just now to summer tour, and the younger one, he played Scotland under-20s.
Yeah.
But they're both huge units. You think I'm big? They're
HGVs.
Oh. I think Magnus must be 6'4", about 17, 18 stone, and Fergus, the younger one, he's 6'5" and 20 stone. He's a prop.
So will we expect to see both of them at Six Nations soon then?
Hopefully the older one, the younger one's taking a back seat a bit from rugby to continue with his degree.
Yeah.
So we'll see, maybe he'll get picked up later, but as props they don't tend to develop till they're a bit older anyway, so I prefer him just to finish his degree and then he can decide what he wants to do.
And were they influenced by you going into rugby, or were they interested before?
I come from the west coast of Scotland and I grew up very much with the whole Rangers Celtic, and I was determined that my kids would not embrace that ethos at all. So when I first started playing rugby, I noticed there was mini rugby as well, and the boys were probably about 7 and 8. Got them involved in that, and then they changed where they played it. They played it up in this sort of all-weather terrain, which was really quite rocky, solid, so they didn't want to go back. So I didn't want to be one of these pushy mums, but eventually cajoled them and said, it'll be really good, there'll be pies afterwards. And so they went back, and thank God they continued to go, because the experiences they've had, and they've travelled all over the world with it, whether it's been through school or squads or whatever, I think it's made them far more respectable human beings with a good outlook on life, good values. Any violence is done away with on the pitch, and that's it. You'll shake hands and buy each other a beer afterwards, and I couldn't really hope for more. The values are very important to me.
Enemies on the pitch, best friends off.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's a good ethos to have. Christopher, we were speaking to earlier, and he mentioned women's sports in general seem to be coming up a lot, and you had some really good thoughts on that. Would you like to share them as well?
I can't remember what I said now.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, obviously it's a good idea, and you know, you've got a childhood obesity epidemic, and it really, really galls me when young girls nowadays think that their positive role model is Kim Kardashian as opposed to Jessica Ennis-Hill. I really don't get that at all. When you think about body dysmorphia, would you not sooner look like Jess Ennis-Hill than Kim Kardashian? And I live in my tracksuit and my trainers, if I'm perfectly honest, so I don't get the whole makeup and hair thing. So if we can show women's sport in a positive way that might inspire girls to take up the sport or any sport and have any of the experiences and improve their body types, their physicality, their fitness, their health, then I think that's a very, very important thing to do. And they'll derive so much from it, so much from it. I know there's a degree now where a lot of young girls will go to the gym, but that's in the gym with your headphones on. Do you interact with anybody? Do you have a laugh? No, you go in and break into a small amount of perspiration and then go home in your active wear.
And of course, Scottish women's rugby is coming up quite a lot. We now have an official woman that is signed as a player as well, which is four now. Oh, I need to do my research a bit more.
3 in France, well they're back at the moment, and 1 in Scotland. But before when I was taking my boys through their own performance pathway, no women rugby players were included in the Institute of Sport because the Institutes of Sport didn't recognise women's rugby as an elite sport. So they never got any of the S&C support that the guys got at the same age group. So as a result, when they came to adult rugby and playing in the Women's Six Nations squads, they were nowhere near as fit. And it was almost a player welfare issue because the other countries invested far more in their women's programme. So we had an external auditor, I don't know what's the word, an external guy came in and did a survey of everything to do with women's rugby, and one of the recommendations was that we appoint a head of women and girls rugby who's solely devoted to growing and developing the sport. So we did that, and we were very lucky to have Sheila Begbie appointed, who worked for Scottish Football, was herself a performance footballer. So she has come in and really shaken the place apart, appointed a full-time national coach for the women's side, Shade Monroe, who coached at Glasgow. So he has brought on the women's team in leaps and bounds. We're still not able to compete with the likes of England and France to a certain extent. They have a far greater depth of players. But we beat Ireland away last Six Nations, which is the first time ever. So Sheila's now been moved over to Director of Domestic Rugby, and we have Gemma Fay, who's taken over from her post, who was the Scotland women's football captain, worked for Sport Scotland. So she's another mover and shaker who will take it forward with great strides. And the growth in rugby in general is much, much greater in the women and girls side of it at the moment.
That's really nice to hear.
So that's something I've got 2 girls who play rugby. The older one is 14, can now deadlift for a bodyweight. She's Mary's part of the
PDP.
She's in part of BT. She also was part of Eric Jones's lot that do the academy.
Right.
Rory Pye's lot that do the
5
girls in plus 20 boys in the state sector. I followed rugby all my life, obviously from somewhere else originally, but I cannot fault what they're doing for the girls' game at that age. And I think Mary's hit the right age, she's 14.
Yep.
So I presume she's got in just at the right stage when the funding's available and everything else, but there's a core of those girls in there that I reckon 2 or 3 people come down from Scotland.
That's fantastic.
What's being done with them and how they're being encouraged.
Yep.
And I hope she does, but absolutely. But it's been, she's so full of energy. It's been one of the best things for her, and I think for these girls, there's more Liverpool girls as well.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant.
That's fantastic. That's so good to hear. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I know you'll cry when she pulls on that blue jersey.
Absolutely. Her mother's favourite player is also Hen Schwartz.
There we go.
Her mother knows her rugby. So.
I like her already.
So there is, you were telling Helen and I earlier as well that you don't need to not start playing rugby. There's lots of opportunities, no matter what age you are, to start playing, especially women's rugby.
Yep. It's quite apparent that a lot of sports, and not just rugby, are suffering from diminishing numbers, and that's, I think, a lot down to lifestyles. Before, 20 years ago, perhaps the guy's wife didn't work, so he had every weekend free to play rugby, but their lifestyles have changed, demographics have changed, where maybe both the husband, wife, partners both work, so you don't get the whole weekend to devote to it. You don't get to go training 2 times a week. So we recognise that, and obviously what we want to do is develop towards the future, grow the player base. So they've derived this new initiative which is called Tartan Touch, and it's for any age group basically. You just fetch up, I think there's a modest fee attached to it, and you can subscribe for the whole summer. So there's various hubs throughout the whole of Scotland, and it just means that you can take your kids along as well, and it's in a safe, friendly environment. You learn the basic skills, and then I suppose if you want to develop it further, you could then start to play contact. It's a great initiative. The numbers have increased tenfold easily, and it's brought more income into the clubs. People get to know each other, more friendships, relationships. It's just been a great initiative.
So another networking opportunity if anyone's interested, start playing touch rugby.
If you go onto the Scottish Rugby website, and I think you just search on it, you'll find it. There's one at Murrayfield Wanderers on a Wednesday night. Out in the back, pictures at Murrayfield in the sunshine.
Followed up by a beer, right? So there is one question we ask everyone. I'm going to tailor it slightly for you. With you being involved in the police, rugby, what advice do you have for, and I'm sorry guys, for women wanting to make their way into very male-dominated areas?
I prefer the term male-populated.
Much better, male-populated, yeah.
For me, and if I'm perfectly candid, it's about believing in yourself and being ambitious, work hard, be honest with others, but most importantly, be honest with yourself.
Excellent. Do we have any more questions from anyone? Great.
Were you expected to stop working as a policewoman when you got married?
No. Got married, that was fine, and then when I first found out I was pregnant, I went to the boss. I said, I'm pregnant now, so is that me inside? He said, no, just go out on the street, but don't get involved in anything. So I remember the first night shift, I was still in uniform at that point, going out there and fighting like hell with this hysterical female outside one of the nightclubs, and my partner saying to me, he said, look, it's okay, I'll deal with it. And I thought, well, that just compromises his safety as well. So we got this female back to the police office, and she was still fighting and spitting and everything. And I thought, I'm going to pass out here. I really didn't feel well. And I spoke to my husband about it. He said, no, that's just not good enough. What if this was their wife and they're not giving them any protected duties? So I was the first female to be pregnant up there in God knows how long. So they just didn't know how to deal with it. So eventually they said, right, okay, we'll create a protected post for you. But some of the guys just didn't like it. I remember one of my friends saying to me, what are you doing in here? I said, I'm on protected duties. You should be at home. No place for you in here. I thought, okay, if that was your wife, would you enjoy that? But then the girl who was pregnant after me, the second female ever to be pregnant in Oban, there must have been a star in the north. They gave her a job counting plugs as part of a survey for the, how you have to do your testing of your plugs every year. I can't remember what it's, PAT testing.
Yeah.
So she was down on all fours underneath all the desks, counting plug sockets.
Jeez.
But I have to say, it's evolved since then.
It's good to know. Well, I want to say a big thank you to all of our sponsors, and I want to invite Angelique up first to tell us a bit about her company.
So I need to take up a few minutes. So I work for ESS. We provide just support to startup businesses and SMEs. So anything from helping them with their business plan, keeping them focused, and then helping them to recruit the right people at the right time. And then on the flip side of that, we are a recruitment business too. So anyone looking for a career change, get in touch. Or if you have a small business, visit our website. We'll be more than happy to hear from you. Yeah,
Thank you. And then we have got Sinead here from Scintilla. They are a patent and trademark advice, and they have a particular focus on the tech sector. And they're very friendly and approachable, especially Sinead, she's lovely. And they're always happy to have an initial chat. So if you're looking for any of those services, just grab Sinead after this. A big thank you to Product Forge that are live streaming, and Brewgutter for all of the beer. I hope you're all really enjoying it. Then we've got Gillespie McAndrew, and they are a full service law firm that offer a wide range of advice. And then we've also got 4Bytes, who are an outsourced software development company that take care of recruitment and managing of your day-to-day outsourced team. If you want to talk to them, you can come to me. As always, thank you everyone for coming. We do have our next event on the 21st of June, so we're not doing it on the last Thursday anymore. We're going to change things up a bit, and we've actually got Andrew who is going to be speaking, and he does meditation. His app is Halistrio, one of the first guys to go on and do meditation apps. And he's usually here, so when you see him, it'll be a familiar face. We're very excited about that. And we are changing venue for then. We will be over on Rose Street at the Bright Purple Academy. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Dee, so much. We have just a wee gift here as a thank you for coming along.
Thank you very much.
So everyone feel free to grab more drinks and eat lots. We've got lots of food, so tuck in. Thanks, guys.